you have to keep in mind that the job title itself is not always the accurate representation of what it is that they're actually doing, what their responsibilities are, what their accomplishments are, along with what are their actual skills and experiences that are required that we need to dive into.
Using the specific skills that they have, the programming languages, starting with those instead, one, it's going to save you a heck of a lot of time of sifting through.
Initiating becoming a hiring machine sequence in 3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, it's Sam Keenly, and welcome back to Becoming a Hiring Machine. This is the show dedicated to fixing recruitment by going beyond saying what needs to change and instead teaches you how to make that change. Today we've got a great Tactical Tuesday episode ahead of us, but before we get into that, I just want to tell you a little bit about the show. Essentially, we have shows within the show here. Some days we have interviews with industry thought leaders and others who are shaking up the space, while other days we cover things like trending topics. Stop by every Tuesday like today for a Tactical Tuesday episode where we go deep on how to do something that's going to help you drive better results in your day-to-day. Some days we open it up for Q&A, and other days you get a mic drop episode from Matt where he shares something he's been thinking about within the recruitment space and wants you to know. And as a reminder, if you love this content and you like what we share here on the show, make sure that you subscribe to get all of these to show up in your feed. All right, today's Tactical Tuesday. You've just started a new search and you're getting ready to source candidates. What's the first criteria that you are using to start building your candidate pool? Are you searching by job titles? If so, you are likely missing out on a large number of great candidates. And the better way is potentially identify 2 to 3 of the most important skills, experience requirements to the role, and then utilize Boolean with that. And the why, that's exactly what we're going to get into today with Vivien. So let's jump into it. Vivien, welcome.
Thanks for having me again. Let's jump into it.
Oh yeah. So this is a fun one. I mean, you and I were just talking about this for almost a half hour before we got started on all the different things that we could go with this. But yeah, I guess starting from the top, why shouldn't people be using job titles as the first part of sourcing a job?
The main reason for it is the job title is not actually the requirement. The job title is more so a representation of the collection of requirements that you have. So the specific example that we were walking through is a software developer. Yes, you're looking for a software developer. Well, what kind? What kind of programming language do they need to know? Like, are they going to be working on like web development, backend, mobile development? Are they going to be in games? And like, even when they're there, like what kind of programming methodology are they going to use? Are they using more like agile? Are they using like waterfall? Which kind of tech stack do they need to be really familiar with? Software developer, like one software developer for, let's say, Epic Games that does like Fortnite and stuff like that, is going to be a very different software developer than somebody that, for example, is more in like the back-end cybersecurity type stuff for like Cloudflare or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so just the job title itself is not really indicative or like a really good search term because it's not the must-have kind of like skill in of itself. The other part is also you have to keep in mind that companies have gotten really creative with job titles, and sometimes they use a new job title as an incentive to kind of keep someone. So they're changing the job title, not giving like an official like promotion or pay raise or something like that. Maybe they have like funky internal like titles and things like that where they're like wanting to be fun. And so job titles themselves are not really a good representation of somebody's experience. The amount of times that even as a recruiter, when you're talking to candidates and you're saying, okay, this is your job title, what do you do? And they actually explain it, in your mind, you're saying your job title does not match your responsibilities at all. And as a recruiter, when you're talking to hiring managers about this is the job title that they have in mind and these other responsibilities, that's not always what this job title actually entails or means. And sometimes they get like really weird with that. And so the job title is like a really tricky one. Another reason why I don't recommend starting with a job title is because, especially when you're looking for like in executive search terms, somebody who's a VP at a very small company, like if I'm a CEO of Vivien Maron's Epic company, that's not the same as a CEO of Google. Fair. Like you have to keep in mind that the job title itself is not always the accurate representation of what it is that they're actually doing, what their responsibilities are, what their accomplishments are, along with what are their actual skills and experiences that are required that we need to dive into.
Mm-hmm. That's so important. Don't sell yourself short though. You could totally be CEO of Google someday. But yeah, no, a couple important call outs there as I was taking some notes on these different things is the way I think of it is like a title is how you bucket like a series of common skills, experiences, things like that. And when you fill that, you need to standardize it so you can know, okay, like how much should I be compensating this individual? What's the general role function? But that role should be very specialized to your company's needs, like you said there, where it's like not all software engineers are created equal. Some, like you said, are great for gaming, some are great for web dev, but that's why using the specific skills that they have, the programming languages, starting with those instead, one, it's going to save you a heck of a lot of time of sifting through. I mean, I would guess that 90% of the candidates, if you just go by the job title, are going to be completely not usable for you, so to speak. So like, why not give yourself a head start there and take the time to sit down, figure out what are like the three most important things for this role to do. That takes 10 minutes, but that's going to save you hours of scrolling through candidates that aren't qualified for your role, so to speak, when you go through the sourcing tool.
Exactly. And so, like, the prime example with a software developer is you can pull up a lot of different software developers, and then you still have to review their profile for the specific programming language and all the different requirements in the context of the development that they will be doing, their background experience. So every software developer is going to have what programming language they actually are capable of doing, and everything that you really need to know, it should be on their profile anyways. And so you're going to have a much easier time to find someone by just using Boolean for the specific things that they need to know. Do they need to be familiar with Python? Do they need to be using GitHub? Those are already two that are really going to narrow down your pool and make you much more efficient. And then you can always add like the industry or some kind of like background if they've been in gaming. Maybe their Python and GitHub kind of like experience and knowledge is not going to be really helpful if they're coming from more of like a governmental type background in like the gaming portion of it. And so this is where you really want to kind of pick the hiring manager's brain and figure out what are the specific skills and what is the context of these skills so that you can work backwards. Skip the job title altogether, because there's going to be some people that maybe are even like calling themselves like a software engineer. Technically, that's not really the appropriate job title for what it is that they're doing specifically. It just, that's what they were given. Maybe HR had no clue when they like built out this like structure and all that kind of stuff. And so you don't want to rely on that. And the amount of times, specifically with contractors, even, they will like, banks are very notorious for that. They will offer a job title so that they can get clearance for a higher compensation for like a higher kind of like band. But in reality, it's a more lower level role. But they know that, oh, if I put it as this type of role, I can offer this compensation, which is like the true competitive compensation for the actual role itself. But then the title is going to be off. And so the job title is not always going to be a very good indicator, because it might just be like a kind of like internalized standard process that to an outsider doesn't really make sense and is not a good representation of their skills. You really want to skip that altogether, because you're pigeonholing yourself into a situation that you then cannot really get out of. And you instead want to look for, okay, what are the specifics that they need to know, and use Boolean for that.
Yeah. All right. So I don't even want to call these edge cases, but two scenarios that immediately come to mind as you're explaining through this, where I think this is going to catch a recruiter not in a good spot, is one, if you're searching for a job title, that's going to find either the person's current role or former role. Most people want a growth opportunity, right? So you're limiting yourself to mostly lateral moves. I mean, yeah, if you're CFO and you want a CFO, like there's not much higher that you can go than a CFO type thing. But for most of these roles, it's not going to carry over quite the same. And the other is like the tangential roles, the slightly different named roles. So if you're searching for a software engineer and you only type in software engineer, you're going to miss Ruby engineer, which might be exactly what you need. But because you're not using that in the skills or what they need to be able to do, but that specific title, you're going to miss out on all those people who are even more qualified for you. But again, because you're using that as the criteria, you miss out on those. So I know you've seen these types of scenarios probably play out a heck of a lot more than I have. Like, what have you found from that on your side of it?
It's a lazy search, because as an agency recruiter, by the time that a client comes to you and says, hey, I need your help finding someone, they've already tried looking by job title. That's the first thing that everybody who is not really all that experienced already does. The job title itself is a good starting point just to see, like, okay, let me see what are software engineers or software developers, what information are they putting in their profiles? So it is a good idea to start by looking at profiles just to see what kind of data are they even adding onto their profiles. But the job title search itself should not be the search to find the right candidate. This is where you really need to go into Boolean. And part of that is also going to be, they might not have an updated kind of like work history. There's one candidate that I placed 2 years ago at this point. Dude has not updated his LinkedIn profile. He is still at his previous company with his previous title. You would never know that he's at the client that I placed him at. He's there, he's happy, everything is well. But according to his LinkedIn, he's not. And so you don't necessarily want to rely on that, because you want to catch people that don't get approached often. And majority of recruiters, just like majority of recruiters are saying excited opportunity for you in their subject line when they're reaching out to everybody, most recruiters are starting with a job title search. And if you as a recruiter kind of want to bypass all of these initial ones, skip the job title and go straight for the skills.
I love that. I mean, it's so, when you think about it, it makes so much sense, right? And going about that. So start with Boolean, pick a couple, 2, 3, 4 most important things. And then that's when you can use things like filters for locations. If you are a startup, you probably only want people who've thrived in a startup before. Someone who worked at a giant multinational might not be great. So that's where you can use like company size, employee size type things. But any other recommendations around how to balance the two, Boolean and filter?
So Boolean, you want that to be something that could be anywhere on their profile. So for example, when it comes to like a programming language like Ruby, they might have it in their About Me section. They might have it under the job description itself, or they might have that in the skills. So you want the things that need to be that could be anywhere in their profile, you want those to be in Boolean. And then you want to use filters for more so kind of like more rigid kind of situations. So for example, somebody who would thrive in a startup environment is someone who is a high growth individual. Most likely, based on their work history, they probably have had very short tenures because they keep looking for growth. So you can actually use the tenure filter that LinkedIn has, that Loxo has. How long have they been at a company? You can use those filters to actually see, okay, who has been very jumpy, who's typically on average with a company for 2 years or less. And like, as long as you're seeing the progression that they really jump from one role to another, and it's like a steady progression in responsibilities and all that kind of stuff, this is somebody who will probably thrive in like a startup. If you're more of like a bigger company, this is where you can start actually looking at who are their direct competitors and then source directly from there by typing in who has been at that, who's currently at that company, or who has been there recently or in the past, and use the competitor, like company filters, to look for specifically competitors. Because if you're recruiting for Google, most likely you can pull from Amazon and from the other FANG type companies. And that way you can kind of leverage these filters to look for the more kind of like static specific things, because you don't want to put like Google and Boolean, because everybody will have like, I know Google Workspace, I know Google Sheets. Those are not the right people that you're looking for. This is where then you want to say, I want to look for a software developer who was at Google at some point. You want to put Google under the company filter.
Yeah, such a great, even more tactical tip for this Tactical Tuesday. I love it. Well, I think this was a good one. I think a lot of people are really going to get some value, some benefit from it. Anything else that they should be thinking about before we wrap on this one?
Talk to the candidates and figure out, okay, like have a chat with them. Like figure out, okay, what you're saying, Ruby, it's not on your profile. How come it's not on your profile? Like have a chat with candidates to figure out what is their rationale behind how they cultivated their profile and where are they hanging out. Especially if you like hit it off with someone and have like pretty good like chemistry and are getting along really well, pick their brain of like, okay, where do you think I can find someone like you? Like totally get that you're not interested. This is not quite aligned with your career goals, but where can I find someone like you? Like, where do you hang out? Are you hanging out on Reddit? Are you like on GitHub? How would I find you elsewhere? That kind of thing. And pick their brain a little bit and leverage that in your search.
Chef's kiss. I love it. Perfect spot to end. All right, Vivien. Well, as always, truly appreciate you joining for this conversation. Again, I think I learned more from you and Matt and just observing so many different recruiters doing what they do. So I know it's going to help inspire many others as well. So as we wrap, Becoming a Hiring Machine is a production of Loxo. If you loved this show and you're not sure where to go next, we've got a link to a similar episode in the show notes. You can find those in the description of your favorite podcast streaming platform, as well as on our website. Full video episodes are available on YouTube as well. And if you ever have questions, send them to us, podcast@loxo.co. So, all right, everyone, that is another incredible Tactical Tuesday with Vivien. Until next time, bye, y'all.